Hi friends, this is Mrs. Dharma or Mawdiay Faith again. I just wanted to continue reading chapter 1 with you. I hope you're enjoying it. Let's get into it. Though Fearful was exhausted, she forced herself to work as hard as she could to finish the last 2 rows of beans. She hurried herself on by thinking about the nice, cool water they would find at their shack and a meal to partially fill her empty stomach. It's no fun being hungry, is it? They never had enough food to fill their stomachs. That's not very nice, is it? Finally, Fearful and her 3 friends, Scaredy Cat, Prideful, and Boastful, were finished and headed for the little hut that was their home. They walked in silence because they were all exhausted. Once they got to the hut, they ate their supper and went straight to bed. The next morning, Fearful jumped up off her and Scaredy Cat's mat after a sleepless night. She rushed through breakfast and packing her few belongings in a skittish eagerness, with only the dim gray light of early dawn to see by. She wanted to get out before the sun rose so she wouldn't be stuck here. She hated living in fear all the day through. She knew there had to be something better. Maybe serving in the land of promise was that something. Oh, how she hoped it was. "How's my little Rose?" Fearful looked up from the bundle she was packing when she heard her father call her by his nickname for her. She found herself looking into her father's sparkling brown eyes that were illuminated by the lamp he held and almost felt safe, so he was holding the lamp. "Doing okay, I guess." "Good. Prince Anointed One, I'd like you to meet my daughter, Little Rose, and her friends, Dancer, Servant of Joy, and Mighty Warrior." Fearful's father pointed to Prideful, Boastful, and Scaredy Cat, calling them by his nicknames for them. "And this is Granny, Dancer's grandma, who's taking care of my daughter for me since my wife died. Girls, Granny, I'd like you to meet His Highness, Prince Anointed One." During this whole introduction, Fearful looked down at the floor. She shuffled her feet across the dirt floor and tried to keep her hands from shaking. Something they did when she was nervous. Do you ever shake when you're nervous? Sometimes we have those things happen when we're nervous. "Is he glaring at me? Why would he be coming for me? He has such a kind voice, and it's almost like he's calling me to trust him. But could it just be a disguise?" A barrage of questions assailed Fearful. "Little Rose, look at me." Fearful timidly looked up at Prince Anointed One to see his strangely kind, gentle brown eyes. She gasped to see the love that poured out of them. She had only seen that kind of devotion in her grandparents' and her parents' eyes. It wasn't a romantic love, but something much deeper. She couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. The voice possibly could have been disguised, but such a pure, sincere charity flowed from his eyes that surely they couldn't be masked. Now, that wasn't so hard, was it? The prince rested a strong hand on her shoulder, a kind smile playing on his lips. "Your Highness, might I be so bold as to ask a question?" Granny asked shyly. "Ask me anything. I'm truly happy for Fearful, but why did you choose her over all the other girls in Prince Iniquity's kingdom?" "My father gives everyone the choice to come serve us, but I came for Fearful in answer to her parents' fervent pleading. I will come for the others in due time if I'm wanted," Prince Anointed One said, looking at each of the girls in turn. "What?" "He said parents. Why on earth would Mother be pleading with Prince Anointed One to come to me? Besides, she's dead." Fearful was so confused. What makes you better than Prince Iniquity?" Prideful scoffed. "Prideful!" Granny and the girls gasped in horror at her disrespect that could get her killed. "Ah, Prideful. Must you always make everything difficult for yourself?" Prince Anointed One murmured, giving a sad smile. She glared back with a look of defiance. He shook his head mournfully and turned to Fearful. We need to be heading out. Mournful is another word for sad. Fearful slowly nodded her head and looked at her friends, wondering how to say goodbye. She hated to leave them. They were her only friends and had become family to her. She felt a bit guilty for going without them, even though she knew they would also get a turn. Have you ever had to say goodbye to friends? It's not easy, is it? Especially if you know that it might be a long time till you see them again. She finally hugged each of them in turn and whispered her goodbyes. She came to Scaredy Cat last, having a hard time keeping from crying when she looked into Scaredy Cat's sad and dejected eyes. "I love you, Scaredy Cat," Fearful exclaimed, hugging her longer than she had the other two. She then said goodbye to Granny, who gave her a kiss on the forehead and wished her well. Once her goodbyes were said, she picked up her bundle of belongings and turned to follow her father and the prince out. Excitement started to well up within her. She was going to a new land, where she hoped she would be free from the fear that breathed down her neck every waking moment. Have you ever been afraid of almost everything? It gets tiring after a while of being afraid of everything. Do you think she's tired of it too? Oh, how slow Prince Anointed One is getting out of here. Will we be able to cross the border in time? She worried as she followed Prince Anointed One, who seemed to be letting the donkeys pick their own ambling pace. She never would have admitted it, but it seemed that she had held her breath the whole day. She was afraid to hope, yet longing that her hope wouldn't be destroyed. She didn't quite understand it, but felt it with all of her being. "Sir, may I ask what it is to be expected of me?" Fearful asked, trying to keep her mind off what Prince Iniquity would do to her if he decided not to allow her to go. Prince Iniquity was renowned for changing his mind in a split second. Renowned is another word for famous, so it's saying that he's famous for changing his mind in a split second. "During this journey, you will be expected to cook and to run errands I need you to go on. Your most important job, though, is to learn who I am. Does that sound fair to you?" Prince Anointed One looked down at her inquiringly. Fearful had to fight to keep her jaw from dropping. That was an odd question. Why would a prince ask a slave if they thought something was fair? Since when did royalty care about what a slave thought? "Sir, that's not my place to say. What you assign me to do, I will do," Fearful exclaimed in astonishment. For all that holding of breath and apprehension, they got out of the boundaries of the land of enslavement way before the sun peeked its head up over the horizon. Still, she was afraid that Prince Iniquity would come after her. She kept looking behind her to see if he was coming. "Father, I'm overjoyed to have you with, but why are you coming along?" Fearful asked. They had stopped for the noon meal, and Prince Anointed One had gone off to wash up, so she took the opportunity to ask the question that had been on her mind. "I'm actually on the king's business. You and Prince Anointed One are going the same direction, so I'm just traveling with you for a ways. In a couple days I will be parting with you. There is a small village whose inhabitants have started to waver in their allegiance to the king. I am being sent to encourage them," Ambassador of Trust explained. Why did Prince Anointed One say that both you and Mother were interceding with him to come to me?" she asked, for this question had been burning in her heart as well. "That, my dear, is not for me to answer," Ambassador of Trust nodded toward Prince Anointed One, whose back was turned to them. Fearful blushed. She was scared to ask him. That, friends, was Chapter 2 of Fearful's Journey Through the Desert. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe you can join me for Chapter 2 in the next video. Oh, before I forget, don't forget to check out the first part of Chapter 1 of Fearful's journey through the desert if you missed it. I hope you enjoyed the story. Bye. God bless.